Are you thinking about moving to the greater Houston area and wondering where you want to live? Well, you come to the right place, as I'm going to give you a brief but complete idea of all the different areas around Houston. My name's Dinko. I'm a licensed real estate agent and a licensed mortgage broker in the state of Texas. If you need to get a hold of me and my team, my contact information will be down below in the description. Call or text anytime. If we take a look at Houston, that's a lot of concrete, a lot of suburbs, and a whole lot going on. So let's look at a little bit of a breakdown of the greater Houston area. So if we start zooming in, you can see that the east side of town is going to be more industrial than the west side of town. That's where a lot more of the refineries are going to be, the storage facilities for the oil. So if you take a look here, this is all going east. And then also down towards Galveston, you're going to have in the ship canal right here, you're going to have refineries. And down here is a pretty big one in Texas City. And then you're going to have oil rigs down here off of the coast, right in front of Galveston. So that's something to definitely keep in mind, where it's kind of more industrial. So if you're working in industrial industry, maybe that's where you want to live, so you're not commuting everywhere. People also will go into the suburbs. So if you take a look here, we have League City, Friendswood, Pearland, and then right here you have the Sugarland area, the Katy area, Fulshire, you have Cypress, Tomball, Spring, the Woodlands right here, Conroe, Montgomery. There's a lot of retirees here as well. It's a nice big lake right there. There is actually alligators there, so I don't know. I never went swimming there because of that. You got Humble right here, and you have Baytown, and going down to Galveston, Texas City. So it's a huge landmass. It's bigger than 5 states like Delaware, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Rhode Island. It's also almost bigger than the state of Massachusetts. So the landmass is humongous. No city drives more miles per car than Houston. So definitely keep that in mind, because you're probably going to want to live where you work so that you're not driving everywhere. And sometimes going to a friend's house can take 45 minutes, an hour plus. So definitely keep all of that in mind, as well as nothing in the greater Houston area is going to feel close. So Houston is built kind of like a wheel. In the center right here is the downtown area. So if you take a look here, that's where downtown is going to be. And then if we zoom out, you're going to have 610 that goes around. That's called the loop. And then you have Sam Houston Beltway 8 that goes around. And then they're building a new one that's not complete yet, 99, which will be the biggest stretch of highway in America. And that's going to go all the way down here to Galveston. Around Galveston, it's going to connect back up here. And that's all toll, pretty dang expensive. For example, when I drive from Katy to the Woodlands and I use the toll, I think I pay maybe like $8 or $10 just in one direction. So it's definitely not a cheap toll road at all. And right here is going to be the medical center and the Galleria. It's all going to be around the 610. Now, the medical center is going to be by 288 right here by Rice University. So if you're in the medical industry, might be a good place for you to live, is around that 610 area, inside of 610, so you're not commuting too far. Rice University is here. Over here by 45 is going to be University of Houston, and the medical center is the Texas Medical Center is the biggest medical center in the world. People from all around the world come to get treatment. So if you're in the medical industry, it's definitely going to be a great employment opportunity for you. Galleria is right here. It's one of the biggest domains in the nation and one of the biggest malls in the nation. And it's going to be located right here. There's a lot of big buildings. It almost looks like a miniature downtown, probably bigger than some downtowns and some pretty decent sized cities around America. And there's buildings really throughout the Houston area. You're just randomly driving and you see a bunch of buildings. The energy corridor, so there's a lot of oil companies that are headquartered here. So the energy corridor is another great employment opportunity, depending if you're in the oil industry. And they also are starting to put some of them in the Woodlands. Woodlands also actually has some Fortune 500 companies stationed there. So the Woodlands area is definitely growing. It's definitely desirable. A lot of executives and stuff like that live out there. So Houston's a really, really big area, a lot going on, especially when it comes to employment. Of course, like I said, down here, earlier, you're going to have a lot of the refineries. So if you're into industrial work, that's definitely going to be a big job opportunity for you. And now if we take a look at all of the suburbs, usually, people want a little bit less hectic stuff going on. They want a little bit more house for their money. And sometimes people say that the schools are a little bit better in the suburbs. So that's why people choose to go out there. So depending where you want to be, it's going to also depend on how much rain you get. The terrain is going to be a little different. So down here in the south, you're going to get a lot more rain. It's going to be a lot more green, and you're actually going to see a lot more palm trees. When you start going north, you see a lot higher and taller trees. And when you start going west, you start seeing a little bit smaller trees and a little bit more of a desert when you start going further and further west, kind of like Austin would be. So it's not as green. There's a little bit more burnt grass during the summers and things like that. And I definitely noticed the difference myself. When I lived in Southwest Houston, my grass was always green. When I moved further out into Katy, my grass was burnt middle of the summer. So definitely probably should put some sprinklers on. And when you go up north here, it's going to be a little bit more colder because you're starting to go towards Dallas. So it's definitely, even though it's one city, it's a little different when you drive around. You take a look at all of that. There's little different pockets, and it feels like you're almost in a little bit of a different city because the terrain looks a little different. So it's kind of pretty crazy when you kind of think about it. But on the other hand, everything is flat, so it's not going to be a big shock where all of a sudden you're going up a hill or up a mountain. Everything is flat, so it's definitely all going to look like Houston. And another thing is the feeder roads. So it's the roads on the side of the interstates and the highways. They're called feeder roads, and they're very industrial. A lot of car dealerships, a lot of restaurants, and a lot going on there. Everything is kind of built right along the interstates and highways. It's probably also why there's so much traffic, because you can't really get anywhere using a road. Everybody is pretty much forced to use the highways and interstates if you're going, further from your house than maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And you can maybe get if you're going 15 to 20 minutes, but you're going to use maybe 5 or 6 or 7 different roads to get to your destination. Because as I said, everything is kind of forced to use the interstates and the highway system. So we'll take a look here again at some more stuff. If you take a look here, let's say you work downtown, you live in Cypress, you're going to have about almost 30 miles of driving to get to work. Now, there are park and rides all around, and I'll explain those here in a bit. And if you go to Katy, depending on where in Katy, you're also going to be about 30 miles plus. And Sugarland is going to be a little bit closer depending where you're at. Pearland is going to be even a little bit closer. League City is going to be right here. And if you take a look at the Woodlands, if it pops up, there we go. So if you take a look at the Woodlands, it's a stretch. It's a little bit over 30 miles as well. So if you're living in the suburbs, you're definitely going to have a commute if you're working in the downtown area, the Galleria area. There's sometimes people that, live in different areas. They maybe live in Cypress, they live in Woodlands, but they work in the energy corridor. And all of a sudden you have a 40-minute drive, and that's without traffic. Now, let's say you live in Katy and all of a sudden you work in the Woodlands. You have 40 minutes of just tolls, and again, without traffic. And like I mentioned earlier, you're going to be paying a pretty penny for it. So that's definitely some stuff to keep in mind. Now, a lot of people, they don't want to deal with the commutes, and they're kind of looking to be within the city limits, somewhere where it's going to be closer, better commutes. So the Heights area right here, it's older houses. It's definitely not cheap at all. You're going to be paying an arm and a leg for a little old house. A lot of them are renovated, but it's a very desirable location. Then you have that's going to be right here. Then you have the Memorial area right here, and that's where you're going to be having a lot of bigger, older houses, and it's also very expensive. The Spring area is starting to kind of spill over from the Heights and the Memorial area, so you're kind of in a hit or miss with how expensive it's going to be. The closer you're at a 610, the more expensive generally it will be. So the Spring Branch area is definitely getting very expensive, again, because some people don't want to commute, so they want to be closer to the city. They don't care if the house is older or smaller. They don't want to have a bigger house living in the suburbs. Bel Air is another area where there's bigger houses. It's expensive. And if we take a look here, the Meyerland area, it's a desirable area, but it also used to get a bad rep because it did flood a lot. Since Harvey, it's actually improved. So if there is a positive about Hurricane Harvey, it's that it did make the government officials take notice and do stuff about it. There hasn't really been any major flood events since, and there hasn't been as much flooding in Meyerland, which is great. And then of course there's going to be Montrose over here as well. So all of these areas are going to be older, smaller houses, more desirable. You're going to see people tearing down older houses, putting up newer, more modern looking homes. So if you're looking to be closer to the city, you definitely have that opportunity as well. Or if you want to be out in the suburbs, you have that opportunity as well. These are the park and rides that I said I was going to mention earlier, and they're all around town. If you zoom in and zoom out, you can kind of see them everywhere. And what the park and ride is, you take your car, well, you don't take it, you drive your car to the parking lot, you hop on the bus, and you don't have to deal with the commute. The bus takes you into downtown. You also don't have to pay for parking, look for parking. So it does actually save you time. And also the bus is able to use HOV lanes. So going into and out of downtown is going to be much quicker and easier. And if you're living, for example, in Katy, there's 2 lanes. So there's an HOV lane going in and out of downtown. So the buses are able to use those. If you live in Sugar Land, I lived in Southwest Houston, so they actually flip it. When you're going into downtown in the mornings, you're only able to use the HOV lane going that way. Then they flip it around. When you're going back home, the cars or the buses are only able to go onto the HOV lane from downtown going into the suburbs. So it's definitely kind of strange because it's an HOV lane that kind of flips. So until you get used to it, it might be a little scary, but definitely they block everything off, so you don't have to worry about that. And the HOV lanes and the park and ride is definitely going to be a positive with your commutes into and out of downtown if you do work there. If you liked the video, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button so you're notified when new videos drop. If you need to get a hold of me and my team, we absolutely love helping people that are making the move to the greater Houston area. My contact information will be down below in the description. Call or text anytime.